Curiosity killed the cat. That's what they say. Curiosity can be so deadly that it's capable of taking all 9 of those lives in an instant. I was curious once. Just once. That's all it takes. I had recently started a new job. I used to work in retail, but had been studying human resources in my spare time so I could work as a company's HR consultant. It had been an exhausting and stressful couple of years, but now I had gotten through it all, and I was going to make a difference, even if it was only in a single office. This had meant that instead of just walking in 20 minutes to my local strip mall, I was needing to catch a bus to my new place of work on the other side of town. I was facing a change in routine, a new path to take every day. Though my longer commute was making me wish I had stayed selling clothes to middle-aged women. It was my 3rd week at my new job, and I saw him. I only ever saw him from behind. He was fairly tall, with light blonde hair, and a smart, casual clothing. He was simple, boring. There was nothing unique or special that jumped out at me. He was walking ahead of me as I was making my way down the street, just around the corner from my bus stop. About 20 feet from the corner, he reached into his pocket. I didn't see what he pulled out, maybe his keys, but from his pocket fell a phone, coming to a safe landing on a strip of grass next to the footpath. He didn't seem to take notice. I quickened my stride to reach and save the man's phone, but as I looked up to call out, "Excuse me, sir, you dropped your phone," I saw that he was nowhere to be seen. I got back to my feet and ran as best as I could in a pair of stiletto pumps, but turning the corner, he was once again gone. I was somewhat bewildered by this. Had he actually been that far ahead of me? I had thought it was only around 40 feet. Not close, but close enough to close the distance if needed. Had he gone into a house around me, gotten into a car and driven away at that moment he had escaped my view? It was at that point, standing on an empty street in an early hours of the morning, that I realized I would likely be late for work if I didn't keep moving towards my stop, let alone if I stopped to knock on doors to find the man whose phone I had now acquired. So I put the phone into my bag. I could drop it off at the local police station on my way at home and let them sort it out. The bus ride to work took around half an hour. I stared out at the simple illustration of suburbia that flew past my window, allowing myself to get lost in an ocean of my thoughts. I was only snapped out of it by a vibration in my purse. I reached in and pulled out my phone. But when I turned it on, there was no indication that I had received any message or phone call. Confused, I placed it back, spotting the other man's phone staring back up at me. I pressed the button, causing the black screen to fill with light. The background was just a picture of a sunset, generic and not all that indicative of what type of person this phone belonged to. In the middle of the screen was a message notification, showing some sort of file name and still image, though it was too small to make out what was in it. I instinctively double-tapped the notification, and to my surprise, the phone unlocked and went straight to the message. Why did it do that? This wasn't my phone. I was invading this man's privacy. I'm normally a pretty respectful person, but in this moment, the fact that this was someone else's property didn't even cross my mind. I didn't think about how this wasn't actually my phone. I didn't think that maybe this was a personal video sent by a family or a lover. I didn't think that this was something I'd better off not seeing. All I had thought was, I wonder what this message is. I had been curious, that's all. Is that so wrong? It was a video file. No message or anything else attached to it. Well, I thought to myself, I already come this far, so I pressed play. In the video was a house. White walls under a bluish-gray roof. The garden outside was fairly sparse, mostly just consisting of lawn with a few smaller bushes and shrubs around the edge near the porch. The camera wavered slightly, clearly being filmed by hand, likely on another phone. That was all there was to it. No one came or went from the house, and whatever was filming didn't move. I was finding myself questioning what was the point of this video was. the house may be for sale and whoever owned this phone was currently looking to buy? Had a friend sent this video to help out? Why not just a photo? Why not just a picture? I waited to see if more videos came through, but after another 10 minutes, that was it. I had opened this file in order to maybe get an answer or hint as to who the man was that lost his phone. But I instead found my curiosity growing wildly out of control. I put the phone away. I was almost at work by this stage, and frankly, I was devoting far too much time of my attention to think on this pointless mystery when I was going to be dealing with actual tangible issues at work. That being said, my work was dull. I had spent years working towards this, my dream of making a change, making a difference. I quickly learned that the reality that HR is something businesses have out of necessity, not out of some desire to ensure the treatment, not out of some desire to ensure they treat their workers properly. It was just a scapegoat, a figurehead of a system already failed. What was the point of everything I had done? I exited my workplace after that afternoon, acutely aware of my rapidly growing sense of worthlessness. Maybe that's why I didn't hesitate when I got another message on my mystery phone that night. It was something different, a puzzle that needed to be solved. It was just after 9 p.m. and I had been preparing a late dinner, just spaghetti, nothing fancy, when I heard the gentle buzzing of the phone. I turned in time to see the screen fading to black. Again, I didn't even hesitate. Like before, it was another video file. This time, it was inside a house. A living room, I think? The ground was a drab brown carpet, a yellow glow cast across the room from an old-fashioned flower-shaped light up above. A fireplace cut into the wall at the back with a fraying couch and armchair flanking it to either side. This time, though, it wasn't some empty frame like before, as the man stood straight and still in the middle of the room. He stared at the camera, unblinking. He seemed thin, with a light blue t-shirt and jeans that almost hung off of him. His face was a clear 5 o'clock shadow, visible in the golden light, and those very red and very dry-looking eyes had creases and bags around them. He looked unwell, really unwell. But for this sudden change of now having a person in the frame, there was still no more action. He simply stood there. In a full minute, that video lasted. He didn't say anything, nor did he shift or fidget even slightly. He didn't even blink once. At this stage, I was moving beyond curious to a bit more creeped out, or at least feeling that something strange was happening. I rationalized that this must actually be some sort of college project, maybe an art house film or for a cinematography class or something. That made sense, right? But I felt this nagging feeling, like when you think you left the hot plate on the front door or the front door unlocked. Something was happening, and I wasn't safe anymore. The next day, I did my best not to think about it. I left the phone at home, on my kitchen counter, the place it had remained since I had definitely set it down the night before. Coming back home that afternoon, though, my eyes locked on it. I felt almost like it was tempting me to see if a new expansion, the riddle, had been sent. I couldn't help myself. I was drawn to it. I had to check and see if there was any new messages. As expected, another video file had been sent. It was only then that I realized that all of the messages had been sent at 9:17, both in the morning and in the evening. That was the point where I wish I had thought better, thought to stop this whole thing, thought it wouldn't have made a difference by then. I was probably caught the moment I watched the first video, or even the second I picked up the phone. The phone was much closer to the man, now only showing his shoulders and head. The light was off and sunlight streamed in through the window. Had he been standing there all night? He was smiling now. More than smiling, he was laughing. It was a gentle laugh, an innocent laugh. He lifted his right hand to reveal a glimmering knife, the daylight reflecting off of its surface. What happened next? I could not prepare for. I don't think any sane person could. The man turned his knife at his face. Slowly, so painfully, he edged the knife forward. I felt the turbulence in my stomach as the knife pierced his eye, jelly mingled with blood flowing down his cheek, skirting around his maniacally grinning mouth. It didn't stop, though. The knife was inexorable. He just kept pushing it deeper and deeper into his head as he began twitching and spasming more with each passing inch. The smile never left. If anything, it got wider, and the gentle chuckle became a full roar laughter. It didn't matter how loud it got, though. It still could not drown out the sharp cracking and crushing of the knife. With its handle almost all the way in the eye socket, forced its way out to the top of his skull. He let go of the knife then, his face falling with his hand. I'll never forget the final second of that video. His howls screamed out of the phone. I slammed the phone down and ran to the bathroom, retching. I could not contain the contents of my stomach any further. I fell to the side after that, the cool tiles I pressed up against my face. I've always been a bit squeamish, sure, but that was so much more than I could possibly deal with. I felt terrified, sick, and exhausted. My muscles involved shivered as my mind raced. I have no idea how long I stayed lying on that floor, doing everything I could to force the imagination of that man, of that knife from my mind. But I know what time I stopped lying there. 9:17 p.m. I heard the buzz of another message. I hauled myself to my feet, using my toilet to stabilize myself on my weak and shaking legs. I stumbled to the kitchen and looked down at the phone. I told my hand not to look. I did my best to restrain myself, my mind screaming at the rest of my body. I could not stop, though. My arm had now a mind of its own. I couldn't even feel the cool glass of the phone as my fingers double-tapped the message, bringing up the final video file. The man was laying on the ground, shirtless, in a pool of his own blood. One of his remaining eyes gave a glassy and accusatory stare at the camera. His face was no longer the focus, though. His chest took up the majority of the frame, his bare chest revealing just how thin he was. This only enhanced the experience as bumps began to form under his skin. Parts of his stomach raised sharply and fell over and over, each getting larger than the last. I tried to turn from the grotesque sight in front of me. I tried to put the phone down, just walk away. But I was helpless to simply watch as the skin finally slit apart and a bloody, gore-soaked hand ripped its way out. The spell was broken then. I threw the phone across the room and ran back to the bathroom, closing the door and locking it behind me this time. In the morning, I would give the phone to the police, like I had intended to do at the start. It would be their responsibility then, and it would be out of my life forever. It was too late, though. I wish I hadn't picked up the phone. I wish I hadn't kept it for so long. I wish I hadn't watched any of those videos I received. And it had been me receiving them. It had been intended for me, not the ordinary man who dropped it. I know this because I received another message this morning at 9:17 a.m. A new house with a simple lawn and a path up the middle, leading to the red brick house and a green door. My door.